Thanks a lot, Mr. Prashant Banerjee, for a very interesting presentation on how LNG and CNG can be used in road transportation. Similarly, my presentation is covering how LNG is making a big impact on changing the fuel used on ships. When we provide fuel to ships, we call it bunkering or ship bunkering. And my presentation today will cover what is LNG bunkering, what is the scope, and what is being done in Asia on LNG bunkering, and specifically Singapore. The idea is that from this presentation, India could learn how they can start the LNG infrastructure or bunkering infrastructure on the coast of India and benefit from it. Small disclaimer, all information in this presentation is only for your guidance, and please don't take any investment decisions or any other decisions based on this presentation. To start with a small introduction of who FueLNG is, we are a 50-50 joint venture between Shell and Keppel. The principal work which we do is around truck-to-ship LNG bunkering, ship-to-ship LNG bunkering, and also we carry out LNG distribution to industrial customers here in Singapore. All these three of activities I will briefly cover in my presentation. We have achieved a lot in a very few times. These are few of the firsts which we have achieved in Singapore and in Asia. From top left corner, FueLNG was the first company to carry out LNG bunkering to harbor crafts by LNG trucks. Similarly, we were the first company to do LNG bunkering of a LNG fueled oil tanker. You can see on the left corner, it is an Aframax tanker which is being bunkered by FueLNG's vessel FueLNG Bellina. In the center, we carried out Asia's first ship to container ship bunkering and also Asia's first SIMOPS bunkering. SIMOPS bunkering means that a cargo vessel is carrying out their cargo work in the port, and the LNG vessel comes in and gives LNG bunkers simultaneously while cargo work is being done. So this was one of the first operations in Asia and which was carried out by FueLNG. Also, close on its heel, we carried out the cool down and LNG bunkering of world's largest LNG fuel vessel, LNG fuel container vessel, CMA CGM Jacques Sade. So a lot of firsts and a lot of achievements, very short duration for FueLNG. So what is LNG and how does it matter? How does it factor with a lot of new technologies which are coming with regards to green technology? So this is a comparison of LNG with few of the other fuels which are available in the industry today or are being coveted as green fuels for shipping. To start with ammonia, it's a highly toxic gas and presently has limited or no infrastructure for LNG bunkering or ship bunkering. Methanol is a very expensive fuel, and again, no infrastructure required for such kind of fueling to ships. LNG is safe, is abundant, and is a clean fuel with 21 to 23% reduction in CO2 emissions. So it's a very suitable fuel for ship bunkering. Then we have low sulfur fuel oil, which was a fuel which has been prevalent before in shipping, highly polluting, significant emissions not only of CO2 but also sulfur, also NOx emissions and particulate matter emissions causing pollution. And it's very carbon intensive. Then we have a discussion on hydrogen. It's a very good discussion. Hydrogen is a good fuel, but presently there is no infrastructure. It's very explosive and extremely expensive, both on the fuel itself as well as the requirement or the infrastructure to put that fuel. Finally, there has been a lot of talk about EVs and batteries. But if you look at the weight of batteries and if they are used on ships, they can only be used for short sea shipping. We cannot be using them for large ocean going carriers just because of the weight they add up on a ship. On the other hand, if you use LNG as fuel, it is 21 to 23% less CO2 emission today. And in the future, by using biomethane or the methane which comes out from bio LNG, or using synthetic methane, which is manufactured using captured carbon and hydrogen produced from electrolysis using renewable energy resources, you can produce a zero carbon natural gas, which is called synthetic LNG. And that fuel can be used not right now, but altogether till the end of 2050. So with the same infrastructure, with the same ship, with the same engine, same bunker vessel, same bunkering infrastructure, LNG can be used today, and bio LNG and the synthetic LNG can be used till 2050, where we are looking at zero carbon fuels. This makes LNG a unique and very environment friendly fuel for the future. This is an analysis which was done by DNV recently in their report, and they have confirmed, they have compared all kinds of fuel like methanol, hydrogen, ammonia. And if you see the blue line on the right side of this here, it shows that whether it's technical maturity, infrastructure, standards being developed, which is very important, energy density, flammability, boiling point, the density of the fuel, which was like very similarly captured in Mr. Prashant Banerjee's presentation, toxicity, and global demand. You could see LNG counts almost higher in all of these factors, making it a very, very good fuel for the ships. Now, if you go to what is the infrastructure of LNG bunkering in Asia today. So all these green dots which you see are LNG bunkering locations which are already in operation. And you can see there is a very small green dot also in India, that is in Cochin. Cochin has carried out LNG bunkering of some ships from the LNG terminal. So it is not that it is totally absent in India. There is a presence of LNG bunkering also in India. As we go ahead, we see there are a number of LNG bunkering vessels which have been delivered in 2020 and 2021 in Japan, Korea, Malaysia, and Singapore, which has enhanced the blueprint of LNG bunkering in Asia. So all these major seaports and transit points have LNG bunker as fuels available right now. And that is not, if you look at these blue dots, these are places there is already decided that there will be LNG bunkering happening. So if you see all over the Asia to Europe route, which is taken by majority of the vessels in this route, or the commercial vessels, there are sufficient points for bunkering LNG in these routes. And if you add what is being discussed right now, there are further points. You can see Sri Lanka has been added, China has been added, in Japan more locations, also Middle East. There are more places being added. So more and more LNG is becoming a fuel which is widely available and has the infrastructure, the good environment footprint, and availability and cost to become a global fuel for the shipping. Singapore has excelled in LNG fueling, but the journey did not start today. This journey has started 2015, and it's very important to understand this journey, because if India has to excel in this new fuel, which is taking the whole shipping by storm, they have to decide on a roadmap. It is just not one action or two action which will result in having LNG bunkering. So the roadmap started in 2015 when Singapore launched a $12 million fund for co-funding of ship owners to build LNG fuel ships as well as LNG bunker vessels. So on the both sides, at the supply side as well as the demand side, they initiated a fund to just kickstart. And this was like $2 million to a ship owner, which is not a huge thing. If you see a LNG bunker vessel may cost $40–50 million. A $2 million is not a huge amount, but it actually triggers, it's people to think. Then they awarded exclusive licenses to two companies. One was us, FueLNG, and another was Pavilion Gas. And then they did what they started making the rules and regulations which will govern LNG for bunkering in Singapore. So on one hand, you have to make the infrastructure, which came from the subsidies, of course. On another hand, they put a lot of effort in making the rules and regulations, the structure, which will be followed to do the LNG bunkering in Singapore. And this was done in parallel. So while the ships were being built to receive LNG and the ships were being built to deliver LNG, you also had the regulations and rules being made in parallel. So how would you do these operations? And if you look at these rules, which are now called TR 56 or technical reference 56 or LNG bunkering, they're very detailed rules. They give you guidance how to do this. They give you all the details which you can take the rule, go and make your procedures and actually carry out LNG bunkering. Very practical rules. And subsequent to this, the first LNG truck to ship operations was done in 2017 in Singapore. 2018 to 19 period saw the first LNG powered tugs being delivered in Singapore. So they started with 2. Today we have about 4 tugs which are working on LNG fuel here in Singapore, and almost 6 on order. The LNG bunkering vessels construction started, and first S2 ship-to-ship LNG bunkering was carried out in Singapore. Come 2020, the new updated TR56 was launched by Singapore. FueLNG Belina, which is Singapore's first LBV, started operations. And as I was showing you in the earlier slides, the first simultaneous operations of LNG bunkering with a container ship was carried out in 2021. So what we want to explain is that if you want to create an LNG bunkering value chain here in India, you have to do multiple assets. Of course, the ship owners need to look into how they were going to upgrade their assets. The new assets needs to be looked into. How is the demand? What kind of ships are coming up? You have to find the demand side. Then the supply side needs to be incentivized. India has a lot of good shipyards. A lot of these LNG bunkering vessels can be built in shipyards. In fact, it is very interesting that tanks built in India, in Gujarat, are actually exported out, and those tanks are being used in LNG bunker vessels in Europe. So it's very easy that they can be also built in India. When they're all over the world, these are being used right now. So on one hand, you have to create the infrastructure. On another hand, you have to create the structures, the rules and the regulations, which will manage this LNG bunkering. And if you see, the month August, there were 35 LNG fuel vessels ordered alone in August. And again, in September, 35 more. Almost 20% of the tonnage on order right now is LNG fueled. The world is rapidly changing into a new fuel, and India should not be left behind. Just to explain what is the infrastructure we are talking about, the infrastructure is centered around Singapore LNG terminal, and which is a receiving terminal, same like all the LNG terminals here in India. And it has a truck loading bay through which ISO containers and trailers are loaded. And these trucks supply to small crafts, to LNG fuel harbor crafts. Also, it is used to supply LNG to industry. And this value chain already exists in India, although they may not be supplying to harbor crafts, but definitely they are supplying to industry. So whole value chain is there. You just have to isolate a jetty or a berth where you can also do it to harbor crafts. And of course, the demand needs to be there. The harbor crafts needs to convert into LNG. Then you look at the other part, they have a secondary jetty, which is used to fuel small LNG bunker vessels like FueLNG Belina. And these vessels provide LNG bunkers to large ocean-going carriers. You're talking about containers, bulk carriers, ro-ros. So this is the truck-to-ship supply chain. The trucks are loaded at SLNG and they go and give LNG bunkers to harbor tugs, to offshore vessels. This is the value chain. This already exists in India. This is the first in Singapore, where they have a major port has converted all their trucks to LNG fuel trucks. And we are loading this LNG, supplying to them, and we are also managing the below kiosk and providing these trucks with LNG. Almost 20% reduction in changing over from dirty diesel to pure LNG for their trucks. Huge CO2 savings. The ports are becoming clearer. No particulate matters. No dirty smoke inside the port. A much better, cleaner air for everybody around. And this is the other operation which we are talking. This has just started in 2021 with the FueLNG Belina being delivered. These operations are carried out at anchorage for bulk carriers, for oil tankers, and also container carriers. And for other container carriers, they are also carried out at container terminals. Till date, we have done about 18 operations. In fact, we finished the 19th operation today morning. And we can see a very rapid demand being built up for these services. So much so that Singapore has already issued a third bunkering license to Total, and they're actually looking into issuing more bunkering licenses. So definitely there's a big demand pickup of this new fuel, which is becoming the go-to fuel for almost all large-scale new shipping which is coming in. That was a presentation from my side. Thank you.